Stuart Hall's theory of identity. Stuart Hall's theory of identity explores the complex, dynamic, and multifaceted nature of identity in contemporary society. As a cultural theorist, Hall viewed identity not as a fixed, innate characteristic but as something that is continuously shaped by social, cultural, and historical forces. His ideas challenge traditional understandings of identity as stable and unified, instead proposing that identity is constantly being negotiated and redefined in response to changing contexts and relationships. At the heart of Hall's theory is the notion that identity is a product of representation. He argued that individuals do not possess a singular, essential identity that is inherent to them. Instead, identities are constructed through discourses and representations that are shaped by culture, language, and history. Hall emphasized that these representations are always partial and incomplete, meaning that identity is never fully fixed or finished. This view aligns with the broader post-structuralist tradition, which rejects the idea of stable, essential truths in favor of an understanding of meaning as fluid and context-dependent. Hall also highlighted the role of power in shaping identity. He argued that identity is often formed through processes of exclusion and differentiation, where individuals or groups are defined in relation to what they are not. This process of othering helps to establish boundaries between identities, but it also serves to reinforce power hierarchies. For example, racial, gender, and class identities are often constructed through discourses that privilege certain groups while marginalizing others. These discourses are not neutral, they reflect and reinforce existing power structures in society. One of Hall's key contributions to the study of identity is his concept of the fragmented or decentered subject. In contrast to earlier theories of identity that portrayed individuals as unified, coherent subjects, Hall argued that identity is fractured and multiple. This fragmentation is the result of various intersecting influences such as race, gender, class, and sexuality, all of which shape an individual's sense of self. Rather than having a single, stable identity, individuals possess multiple, often contradictory identities that are continuously in flux. This multiplicity reflects the complexity of modern life, where individuals are constantly negotiating different social roles, cultural influences, and personal experiences. Another important aspect of Hall's theory is his emphasis on the historical and cultural specificity of identity. He argued that identity is not something that is universal or timeless, rather, it is always shaped by the specific social and historical contexts in which individuals find themselves. For example, Hall examined how colonialism and the legacy of imperialism have shaped racial identities, particularly in the context of the African diaspora. He argued that Black identities have been constructed through centuries of racist discourses that positioned Black people as inferior to white people. These discourses were instrumental in justifying the exploitation and oppression of colonized peoples, and they continue to shape contemporary understandings of race and identity. In his analysis of race, Hall drew attention to the ways in which identity is not only constructed through external discourses, but also through internal processes of identification. He argued that individuals actively participate in the construction of their identities by identifying with certain cultural, social, or political groups. This process of identification is not a passive one, it involves choices, negotiations, and sometimes even resistance. For example, Hall noted that many people of African descent have actively reclaimed and redefined their racial identities, in response to the racist discourses that have historically marginalized them. Through cultural movements like Pan-Africanism, individuals have sought to assert a positive Black identity that challenges dominant narratives of racial inferiority. Hall also addressed the ways in which globalization has impacted identity formation. In the context of increasing cultural exchanges, migration, and the spread of mass media, traditional identities that were once tied to specific national or cultural contexts have become destabilized. Globalization has led to the emergence of hybrid identities, where individuals draw on multiple cultural influences to construct their sense of self. Hall argued that these hybrid identities reflect the interconnected and multicultural nature of the modern world. However, he also acknowledged that globalization can lead to cultural homogenization, where dominant cultural forms, particularly those from the West, are imposed on other cultures. In addition to his work on race and globalization, Hall explored the relationship between identity and popular culture. He argued that popular culture plays a crucial role in shaping how individuals understand and express their identities. Through media representations, advertising, and entertainment, popular culture provides the symbols, images, and narratives that people use to construct their sense of self. However, Hall was also critical of how popular culture often reinforces dominant ideologies and stereotypes, particularly in relation to race, gender, and sexuality. He called for a more critical engagement with popular culture, one that recognizes its power to both shape and challenge identities. Hall's theory of identity is also closely tied to his broader ideas about culture and power. He argued that culture is not just a reflection of social life but an active force that shapes how individuals understand themselves and the world around them. Culture provides the symbolic resources through which identities are constructed, but it is also a site of struggle, where different groups contest the meanings and representations that define them. For Hall, the study of identity is inseparable from the study of culture, because it is through cultural practices and discourses that identities are produced, negotiated, and challenged. Moreover, Hall's work on identity challenges the idea that individuals have complete control over their identities. He emphasized that identity is always shaped by external forces, such as societal expectations, cultural norms, and historical legacies. While individuals may actively participate in the construction of their identities, they do so within a broader context that constrains and limits their choices. For example, Hall argued that people of color, women, and other marginalized groups often face significant challenges in defining their identities due to the pervasive influence of discriminatory discourses and power structures. However, he also recognized that marginalized groups have agency and can resist and subvert dominant representations of their identities. In conclusion, Stuart Hall's theory of identity offers a complex and nuanced understanding of how identities are formed, negotiated, and transformed in contemporary society. His work highlights the importance of representation, power, and culture in shaping identity, and it challenges traditional notions of identity as stable, singular, and essential. Instead, Hall presents identity as fragmented, dynamic, and always in the process of becoming. His insights into the relationship between identity and race, globalization, popular culture, and power continue to be influential in the fields of cultural studies, sociology, and critical theory, offering valuable perspectives on the fluid and contested nature of identity in a globalized world.